Hello everyone and welcome back to another Movie Nights movie review. Today we're going to be talking about Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire. This is directed by Zack Snyder and it is releasing on Netflix, I believe this Thursday night. I believe they're doing an early release for it. Before we dive into the review, I'm going to read the synopsis for you. When a peaceful settlement on the edge of a distant moon finds itself threatened by the armies of a tyrannical ruling force, a mysterious stranger living amongst its villagers becomes their best hope for survival. I believe many years ago, Zack Snyder had intended for this to be like a pitch for a Star Wars film that just got shelved and never happened, and then eventually made it his own film with Netflix. And it's a two-part story, I believe, with part 2 coming out sometime next year, if I'm not mistaken. I'm a fan of Zack Snyder's other work. I particularly love Man of Steel. His version of Justice League is fantastic. The extended version of BVS is much better than the theatrical version is. 300's great. His Dawn of the Dead remake is pretty good. I thought Army of the Dead was fun, and I've never seen Sucker Punch. I've been told to avoid it. And I also liked his Watchmen movie. And while this film has a lot to love in it, which I'll get into, unfortunately, I was left a bit underwhelmed by it. It's not a horrible movie by any stretch, but there is things left to be desired. And that does beg the question, though, of we know that they're going to be releasing a director's cut of this movie sometime soon. I don't think they drop on the same day, but I think it's coming later on. And first of all, Netflix, why do this? The whole point of you is that you don't have to worry about a box office return, so there's no point in like making edits to a vision that already existed. So I don't know why this is happening. I don't know whose decision it was, but I do think it's a rather silly decision. Just release the movie how it was intended to be made. One time. You know, I don't see the point in doing that. But regardless, let's dive into the review. I'll start off with the positives first. One, with any Zack Snyder film, you know that it's going to look phenomenal, and of course it does. It doesn't just look good, it looks gorgeous. It's visually stunning, not only in the cinematography and the sets, but the visual effects are very good. I don't think there's a bad visual effect in the movie. The world that it's set up and creating is very interesting, and I was very intrigued by it. You know, it's nothing new necessarily in regard to science fiction, but I don't think things have to necessarily be new to be interesting. And I was fascinated by the world, and I actually would love to see more stories take place in this universe. The action scenes are incredibly well done. Yes, you get your trademark Zack Snyder slow motion, but it's not overused. I think it's used just the right amount of times. The score by Tom Hokenberg, or Junkie XL as he was formerly known, really great. He's one of my favorite composers working today, and his work shows here. And I thought that Sofia Boutella did a great job carrying the film. I've always liked her as an actress, and she does great work here. Even if she's saying lines that aren't necessarily good ones, you believe them coming out of her mouth. And I'll kind of transition that to some things that I was a bit disappointed by in the movie. One of them being elements of the script. Parts of it I loved. Like, I loved the backstory of the lead character. There are certain moments in the film that are just nailed, even from a screenplay perspective. One of them, there's a sequence, I won't spoil it, there's a sequence with Anthony Hopkins' character and a child at this village, and it is gorgeous. Like, it's an amazing scene, it looks great, it's emotional, it's perfect, and I feel like somewhere in what they shot there are more scenes like that, but overall, the dialogue definitely needed another pass, and it's not even necessarily that all the lines were bad. Some of them were quite good. Some of them could have been omitted entirely, and it would improve the scene. And sometimes there were just what seemed to be like redundant sentences, and I'm just like, this just feels like an early draft of a screenplay that could have been fixed. The movie is paced a bit odd as well. I think the first 45 minutes are paced exceptionally, and then after that, it kind of goes all over the place with emotional peaks and valleys of kind of build up and sudden payoff and then build up to no payoff. It kind of just felt like a bit uneasy as you're going through the movie. You're just like, okay, like what are we leading up to here? And a lot of the film is reliant on one avenue of storytelling, and it's not a new avenue of storytelling. It's the, we're going to round up a team to fight, you know, the big threat. And the way that this film rounds up the team, I won't spoil anything. It's essentially the lead characters go to a character they want to recruit, you get a quick scene with them, whether it be action or emotional, and then they watch the scene happen, the characters that are there. It's not like this is the first time we're meeting these new characters in the film, and yet they just kind of watch a scene play out, and then they say, we'd like you to join us, and then they do, and they just go to the next person, and then the next person, and that's kind of the whole movie. And it was just an odd way of going about the story, because like I said, we're not introduced to these characters beforehand, so it's not like we have a remnants of who they are before our lead character meets them. And so kind of having the lead characters meet them, and then you watch a quick scene with them kind of with our lead characters in the background was just very, it just felt weird, and it just felt like there was something missing. And while the film's third act has a lot of great action and some good emotional beats as well, the whole movie is building up to, excuse me, the third act taking place at a certain location, and then it takes place at a completely different location, and they even joke about it at the end of the movie. They're like, oh, I'm really glad that we didn't have to fight here. And yes, I'm sure it has something to do with part 2 and where the story's going from there and why the fight didn't occur there. But for the purposes of the movie, you know, the build-up to getting there, it did feel kind of undercut by where the third act took place. And for a movie that really captured me in its first 45 minutes, it slowly was just losing me across its runtime. And there were elements where it picked back up. There's an amazing sequence with a almost like Harry Potter hippogriff type creature. There's a great action sequence with Sofia Boutella in a bar with Charlie Hunnam as well. But how it would pick and choose the recruiting of who gets an action scene, who doesn't, it shafted some of the characters, and it just kind of felt hollow as it went on, which is a shame because, like I said, I was really encapsulated by the movie when I first started. Which brings me to the conclusion of, I hope that in the director's cut of the film, which I will watch, the film intrigued me enough to watch the director's cut, I hope that all of these problems I have are solved in that cut, because I've seen this happen with Zack Snyder before. Like when I first watched Batman v Superman in theaters, my biggest complaint with the movie is that it was very jarring and it was edited weird, and I was just like, what? It didn't even feel like a properly put together movie, just because of how poorly edited it was. And then you watch the extended cut of that movie, the Ultimate Edition, and you're like, oh, no shit, it felt weird and janky because they cut out all the transitional bits in the movie, and it just completely ruined the pacing of what it was supposed to be. So I'm kind of hoping it's a situation like that here, and then when I watch the director's cut, a lot of the issues I have are like, oh, they were solved there, because there are sequences in the movie that are flashbacks, but they're done with off-camera ADR dialogue. So I'm like, I wonder if in the director's cut, like, this isn't a flashback, it happens earlier. So like you do think about that a little bit as you're watching it, but it is just frustrating that we're not just getting the full vision first. I'm still aggravated by that. But putting that aside and just kind of focusing on the movie that I watched, a lot to like, but also more to be desired and stuff to be disappointed by. So overall, Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire, the initial version for me is a mixed bag that at the end of the day did leave me a little bit disappointed, but the very intriguing world, the great lead performance, and the incredible visuals have intrigued me to watch the director's cut of this film. And, you know, we've seen what Zack Snyder is capable of when he's able to kind of do things to fruition. I think Zack Snyder's Justice League is amazing, and I'm hoping that the director's cut invokes that same emotion within me. So that'll do it for this review, guys. If you've seen it, what did you think about it? Please let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to see your thoughts. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next review.